Hello, and welcome to my channel. I'm Margaret, and here I share real-life stories from my friends at the nursing home. When I saw my wedding album stuffed in a garbage bag in the attic, I realized they'd erased me from their lives, so I erased their mortgage. It was a Tuesday, warm and windy, the kind of day that made the old bones ache just enough to be noticeable. I had gone up to the attic looking for a shawl I'd knit years ago, the blue one with the tiny pearl buttons. But what I found instead was a clear plastic garbage bag, crammed into a dusty corner like something unfit for polite company. Inside, my life. My wedding album, warped slightly from heat, pages stuck together from years of being pressed and ignored. My late husband's army portrait, a dried corsage from my son's high school graduation, all balled up like trash. I didn't cry. I sat there on the splintered floor, light from the attic window catching the gold of my wedding ring, and just stared. I listened to the faint sound of Kelly's laugh downstairs. My daughter, sharp and sarcastic, probably on the phone with her husband, Eric, probably complaining about me. I was 70. Not spry, not frail. I could still sew a straight line without my glasses, still carry a load of laundry, still wake at 6 out of lifelong habit. But to them, I was furniture. Something they'd agreed to take in out of obligation, then shoved aside when I didn't fit with their decor. They said all the right things when I moved in. "Of course, Mom, we want you here. You'll be part of everything. No need to waste money on a retirement home. We're family." It was just after my stroke, a small one, more of a warning than a blow. I couldn't be alone in the apartment anymore, and the lease was up. My son, David, lived across the country, and I didn't want to be a burden to his busy wife and 3 children. So I believed Kelly. She had space, after all, that beautiful 2-story colonial in East Orange she and Eric were so proud of. I gave up my place, my car, my independence. I signed some papers they brought me. "Just to make the house easier to manage," they said. I didn't ask too many questions. I trusted my daughter. God help me, I trusted her. The guest room had white walls and no curtains, just a flimsy plastic blind that rattled when the wind blew. My things were kept in boxes. "We're trying to keep the space uncluttered," Kelly said once, folding her arms tight across her chest, like she did when she was annoyed. She didn't say it, but I heard it anyway. "You're the clutter." My sewing machine, a Singer from 1973, was in the garage next to the leaf blower. My books were boxed and labelled "Mom's Junk." And my friends. They didn't visit. Kelly told them I wasn't well, that I needed rest, that the house wasn't set up for guests. When I called my neighbour Joan, she sounded surprised to hear my voice. "Kelly told me you were in a home. I was going to send flowers. Sometimes I walked in the backyard just to remember what air smelled like. Eric never spoke to me unless he was annoyed. The old bat left the porch light on again," I heard him say once. I was in the kitchen. He didn't know I was listening. The next day, I found that my family photo wall in the hallway, the one I'd started myself, arranging everyone from Grandpa Walter to baby Maddie, had been taken down, replaced with a canvas print of some generic forest scene. I asked Kelly about it. She didn't even look up from her phone. It didn't match the colors. I started taking walks to the library. It was 3 blocks away, and I went slowly, using the cane only when my hip acted up. I'd sit in the community room and read magazines, or help the little ones sound out words when their mothers were too tired to correct them. One day, a little girl with big brown eyes looked up at me and asked, "Are you a teacher?" "No," I said softly, "just someone who remembers how to listen." It made me feel human again. But at night, I lay in that cold room, staring at the ceiling, remembering the way my husband used to trace my shoulder blades with his fingers, the way David used to crawl into bed with me during thunderstorms, the way Kelly used to bring me drawings full of pink clouds and stick figure hugs. Where did that girl go? The album was the final straw. My wedding day, June 14th, 1971, had been modest but beautiful. I'd sewn my own dress, ivory lace with a scalloped neckline, and I'd never felt more loved. Seeing that dress bent and creased in a garbage bag broke something I didn't know could still break. That night, I waited until they were asleep. I went downstairs, made a cup of tea, and sat at the kitchen table with the deed. The house was quiet, except for the soft hum of the refrigerator. I opened the drawer under the phone. The important papers folder was still there. I flipped through. My name was still on the deed. In fact, I was the primary. I remembered, when Kelly and Eric bought the house, they hadn't been able to get a good mortgage rate. I'd co-signed. I'd even put up the down payment from my retirement fund. I never asked to be paid back. I thought I'd be part of a home. Instead, I'd been made into a ghost. And that's when the idea took root. Small, quiet, but persistent. Like a stitch pulled too tight. I'd been forgotten, buried in an attic. But forgotten things, when unearthed, can still shine. I didn't act right away. At 70, you learn the value of patience, of quiet, of watching the way people move when they think you're not paying attention. I started noticing things. Eric always left his briefcase by the front door, even though Kelly asked him not to. He never said thank you when I made coffee. He just drank it and walked away. Sometimes I heard them arguing late at night, their voices low and urgent. Money came up a lot. Kelly's face was tighter than it used to be. She had that strained smile, the kind you wear for neighbors or school fundraisers. Every once in a while, she'd forget I was in the room and say something like, "We need to get her into assisted living before the holidays. I can't do another Thanksgiving like last year." I always made the stuffing, her favorite. I stopped offering after that. The quiet revenge didn't come as a flash of rage. It came like a seam coming undone, slowly but steadily, until you couldn't ignore the hole anymore. It started the day I went to the public library and asked the woman at the desk, "Do you know a discreet real estate agent?" Her name was Sheila, and she wore purple glasses that matched her scarf. She looked at me, really looked, and said, "Yes. And I know a good lawyer too, if you need one." I liked her immediately. She wrote 2 names on a sticky note. I folded it into my bra like a war widow hiding a telegram. Later, in the library bathroom, I looked at myself in the mirror. My hair was white and thinning at the temples. My skin had the crinkled softness of paper, and my eyes looked tired. But there was something else in them too. Steel. I hadn't seen that in a long time. A week later, I walked into the office of Janice Rivers, realtor. Her office smelled like fresh carpet and coffee. There was a dish of mints on the desk and family photos on the shelf. Real ones. Not the kind that come with the frame. She greeted me with warmth, not condescension. "How can I help you, Mrs. "Margaret," I said. "Margaret Elwood." "And are you buying or selling?" I smiled, though it didn't quite reach my cheeks. "Selling." She tilted her head. "Your home?" "Technically, yes." I slid the deed across the table. "It's in my name. My daughter and her husband live there now. But I believe it's time to move on." She didn't blink, just nodded. "All right, Margaret, let's talk through the process." I kept the listing quiet. I told Janice to hold off on putting it online. Just word of mouth for now, and no signs yet. She understood. "Some homes need discretion," she said. Back at the house, nothing changed. Not at first. I still made breakfast, still folded laundry that wasn't mine, still listened to Kelly tell people, "Mom is adjusting. We're doing everything we can." As if my sadness was a chore. She never once asked what I missed. I missed the sound of my own radio. I missed having a houseplant. I missed being asked questions instead of being talked at. One night, I came downstairs to get water and heard Eric on the phone in the den. The door was cracked. He was pacing. "I told you once we move her out, we'll refinance." "No, she's still here." "No, she doesn't know. She thinks we're doing her a favor." He laughed. Laughed. The next morning, I called the lawyer Sheila had recommended. His name was Lawrence Kim, sharp as a tack, kind eyes, and didn't once talk down to me. I told him everything. "The house is in your name, Mrs. Elwood. You have every right to sell it. And if they contest it," he smiled, "they won't get far, especially not if you have documentation of emotional mistreatment, which—" He tapped his pen. "I believe you just gave me." 2 days later, I called Janice. Put the sign up. I wish I could have seen their faces when they pulled into the driveway that evening. I was in the kitchen when the front door burst open. Kelly stormed in first, hair wild, her face red with fury. "What the hell, Mom?" I looked up from the table, where I was knitting a baby blanket for the neighbor's new granddaughter. She held up the for sale sign like it was a severed limb. "You want to explain this?" I nodded toward the paperwork. "It's my house." Her voice cracked. "You're confused. You told us—" "I told you I'd move in. I didn't say I gave up my rights." Eric walked in, slower, eyes narrowed. "This is insane. You're not even capable of managing something like this." I looked at him evenly. I managed a household on one income for 27 years. I raised 2 children and ran a sewing business out of my kitchen. I nursed my husband through terminal cancer without once asking for help. Don't you dare tell me what I'm capable of." Silence. "Consider this your 60-day notice," I added, folding the blanket gently. "You'll need to find somewhere else to live." The shouting lasted for days. Kelly cried. Eric threatened. They brought up all the things they'd done for me. I didn't fight. I didn't shout. I just kept knitting. I kept going to the library. I packed, slowly. The day the appraisal man came, I baked a pie. Apple. The smell filled the house. "I thought it would be nice to have something warm in the air," I told him. He smiled. "It smells like a real home," he said. "It used to be." 2 weeks before closing, I toured a senior living community on the other side of town. A modest place with tidy gardens and an actual sewing room. The manager, Teresa, greeted me at the entrance. "We believe in dignity," she said. I believed her. The rooms were bright. The hallways smelled of lemon and fresh sheets. One of the women was teaching children how to make pillowcases for charity. They had name tags on the doors, not numbers. I signed the lease that afternoon. The night before I moved out, I went back to the attic. I opened the garbage bag and took my wedding album out, careful not to smudge the ink on the old Polaroids. I wiped each photo gently with a cloth. My dress still looked beautiful. I left everything else in the attic, let them deal with the weight of it. The morning I moved out was sunny and unremarkable, just the way I wanted it. Kelly didn't help me pack. Eric didn't say goodbye. I left them the keys, the for sale sign, now replaced with a sold one. The closing date was official. Their deadline was set. I didn't wait around to see the scramble. The moving van wasn't large, just a few labeled boxes, my sewing machine, and one framed picture of my husband smiling on a fishing trip. I sat in the front seat with my palms folded neatly in my lap. The driver was a nice boy named Miguel, who called me Ma'am, with a kind of old-fashioned respect you don't see anymore. As we pulled away from the house, I didn't look back. There was nothing there for me now. The community at Rosewood Court wasn't fancy. There were no fountains or spas, no luxury branding, but there were benches under willow trees. There were window boxes filled with geraniums. There were volunteers who visited every Tuesday to help residents use their phones or read the news. My room was simple: a twin bed with a firm mattress, a large window that let in golden light in the afternoons. And on the door, a nameplate: Margaret Elwood. I ran my fingers across the letters the way one might touch a sacred thing. It had been a long time since my name was allowed to mean something. The first week, I unpacked slowly. Each item felt like an affirmation: a thimble from my first sewing kit, a photograph of my children when they were small, still full of need and wonder, a faded recipe card written in my mother's handwriting, her peach cobbler, no less. I placed them around the room like landmarks on a map of who I used to be. The staff at Rosewood were kind. Not in the performative, brittle way that Kelly had become, but in a quiet, unobtrusive way that made me feel like I mattered just enough. Teresa, the manager, checked in every morning. "How are you settling in?" "I'm not settling," I told her. "I'm finally living." She smiled and touched my arm. "That's what we want, Margaret. That's exactly what we want." It was in the second week that I wandered into the activities room and saw a boy crying. He was maybe 9 or 10, with shaggy dark hair and a face blotchy with frustration. His hands were curled into fists on the table, and beside him was a lopsided patch of fabric with tangled thread. "No one showed me how to knot it," he said bitterly to no one in particular. I sat beside him. "You want to learn?" I asked. He looked at me sideways, still defensive. "You know how?" I nodded. "I've been sewing since before your parents were born. My first machine was older than television." He cracked a smile at that. And so we began. That boy, Andre, became my first unofficial student in what eventually turned into Tuesday Threads, the sewing circle I started in the community rec room. At first it was just him. Then a couple more kids from the neighborhood joined in. Their parents worked late or just needed a break, and Rosewood allowed guests as long as they signed in. Soon the circle grew. We stitched pillowcases, bookmarks, little stuffed animals. I taught them how to thread a bobbin, how to repair a sock, how to press seams with a warm towel when they didn't have an iron. Some of them had never even held a needle. "This is magic," one girl whispered, watching a piece of cloth become a drawstring pouch. "No," I told her, smiling, "this is craft. And craft is something you carry with you." In late fall, I got a letter from David, my son. It wasn't long. Just a page, handwritten in a slant I recognized from his school notebooks. "Mom, Kelly told me what happened. I don't know what to say, except I'm sorry. I should have paid more attention. I believed her when she said you were fine. I was wrong. If you're willing, I'd like to come visit you, just to sit. No expectations, just you and me. Love, David." I cried when I read it. Not because he said sorry, but because he asked to see me, not the version of me that fit around his life. Kelly never contacted me after the move. I heard, through Joan, who still sent Christmas cards, that they were forced to find a condo in Bloomfield, downsizing drastically. Apparently, Eric's business had gone under, and they'd been counting on refinancing the house. Their plan had unraveled the minute I put my name to use. I never gloated, but I won't lie. It felt good knowing they had to explain why they lost the house, that the story would have to be told, if not publicly, then at least in whispers. She sold it. Yes, her name was still on it. But why? Why indeed? One winter afternoon, I was sewing a new curtain for my window when a knock came at the door. It was Teresa, holding a stack of mail. On top, A padded envelope. Inside was my wedding album. Restored. Every page had been cleaned. The bent corners repaired with photo-safe adhesives. Each image laid into archival sleeves. There was no note, but the return address was David's. I turned each page slowly, remembering the sound of Marvin's laugh, the softness of the veil I'd stitched by hand, the way the sun caught my face during our vows. I closed the album gently and placed it on my bedside table. My memories, I whispered, deserve better than a dusty attic. Now every morning I wake up to sunlight. I make myself coffee. Real coffee, not whatever weak brew Kelly used, and sit on the little balcony outside the activities room. Birds come to visit. So do the children. I'm not anyone's burden here. I'm Margaret Elwood, seamstress, mother, teacher, woman of quiet revenge. I don't yell. I don't demand. But when I stand now, people make room. Not because I insist on it, but because they see me. And the house. The house was never really the point. It was never about bricks or paint or property lines. It was about being invisible in a place where I once gave everything. Now, in this small room with a big window, I'm visible. I'm living, and I am finally free.